Thank you so much, guys. Another round of applause to our experts for that educational panel. Now, let's get ready to explore the future of patient interaction and service delivery in healthcare with our keynote speaker, Michael Koch. In this session titled The Ever Shrinking Customer Experience, Industry Trends, the Move from Fulfillment to Engagement, and What Lies Ahead, Michael will delve into how we are witnessing a paradigm shift from traditional transaction based interactions to creating meaningful, memorable connections. Michael will unpack how organizations in this industry are reimagining their approach to customer service, moving beyond simple fulfillment to cultivate loyalty and build long term relationships. With his expertise as a public speaker and CEO and co founder of the Michael Coach Group, Michael will discuss industry trends and the critical transition from merely fulfilling patient needs to being actively engaging with them in their healthcare journey. Please, let's give a warm round of applause for Michael Coach. Please come on up. He's on his way, I promise. There he comes. All right. You just wanted to make us wait. It's okay. I get it. There you go. Very good.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome.
Appreciate that.
Great.
Yep. I'll just speak out of this one. We're good. Thanks, everybody. What I've learned from engaging with everybody so far today, in particular at this last session and one earlier, I'm just overwhelmed. I got to tell you, I'm overwhelmed with just how incredibly talented the number of talented people that are in this building are. And we're going to talk a little bit about today about not just the session we had a minute ago about where we're evolving as a people in work-life play, but we're going to talk a little bit about how it's evolving into fulfillment and how everything is changing around us every day. If you look at my career as a story, I've had people tell me all the time, Michael, you just need to write a book. I've built hotels, I've built stores, I've built buildings and robotic environments in virtually every country of the world except for Cuba. I can tell you verbatim, I'm one of the few people, one of the few Americans who's ever built anything in North Korea and lived to tell about it. So that's a funny joke. Come on. I had an incredible experience working with those people there, regardless of politics and governments and all the other stuff. But I can tell you that what I've learned from people that I've worked with is something that I share in environments like this one today. Having worked for Bill Johnson at the Ritz-Carlton, having been hired and worked managing the global development for Apple for Steve Jobs out of the London office, having worked at Samsung, Apple's arch rival, with Mr. J.Y. Lee, and certainly taking all those experiences that I've worked with globally from all those people, it helps me engage with not just my employees, but my clients. So they understand what's happening in trends, but also how things are going to change in the next few years. So you don't have to make the same mistakes that others have already made. What we're seeing in technology, things are changing at a rapid pace. But by the end of today, I'd like you guys to commit to one thing. And simply put, I'd like you to change your mind. I'd like you to change your mind every day you go to work. Because the way things are progressing, not just from a technology standpoint, put technology over here, but also make sure that you're understanding the people perspective. We're changing quickly. It wasn't but just 17 years ago that some guy named Steve Jobs came up with this gem. 17 years ago, 2007. And we're now at iPhone 15. Somebody said Pro Max, something like that. Well, a revolutionary guy who said, regardless of what people say, I'm going to make something and it's going to work. And he stuck to it. Here we are years later. Obviously, we know how successful a little company called Apple is. But what happened in February 2020? Of all people, you guys know more so than I. Okay. My environment in commercial development, in dealing with schools, in dealing with retail stores, in dealing with hotels, everything changed. I was in China at the time in December of 2019. Remember the riots that were happening outside in Hong Kong? Remember the hotel riots and the protesters? That was right outside my hotel. I was working heavily in South Korea and I was working heavily in China. I can tell you that when I came back to the United States, what happened? I was visited or greeted by signs like these: temperature check stations, handwritten, because at the time, everybody was reacting quickly to figure out something before we move forward. And I know you guys know this. I'm saying it from a perspective of my industry and how we were impacted as well. COVID-19, particular testing areas showing up in Central Park out of necessity, not because we had planned for it, but because we had to move forward quickly and engaging with our particular people to make sure people were safe. But the impact was greater than people realize. And even 4 years later, it's still impacting how we live, how we work, how we play. Real estate, you see it at the time, everything was shut down. It was the end of the world, as people had associated. Retail stores closing, billions, trillions in lost revenue. Hospitality sector hasn't fully recovered as of today. I can tell you that from public sentiment, unemployment went through the roof, 400 million Americans out of work, or sorry, 40 million Americans out of work, isolation. But then the biggest thing that I got from that particular exploration was fear of the unknown. And we're dealing with it as of today because we know that what happened previously could happen again down the road. We've already seen how it could possibly happen. The result was workplace success models, such as the Apple campus in Cupertino, became obsolete, such as the Samsung 837 building in Manhattan, award-winning building that we put together in 2015 and 2016, all of a sudden became obsolete because people couldn't engage the same way any longer. They couldn't come up to you and shake your hand, give you a hug. How's your day? Our engagement method was completely different. I remember when Steve and Johnny were sitting on a park bench just outside of London near Buckingham Palace. And we came up with the idea of how he was going to put together the Apple campus, which is now, that big spaceship that everybody calls it in Cupertino. Well, if you think about it, that particular building roughly cost Apple about $5 billion. It's nearly as large as the US Pentagon in the Washington, D.C., has roughly 25,000 employees. Samsung 837, 800,000 visitors nationally every year into a building that you couldn't purchase a single product. We wanted you to experience what we were creating, and that sort of attraction and conversion into product was there. Those sites became obsolete. Apple's still dealing with it today. You're hearing about hybrid work models and how people want to go back to work, and some do and some don't. Can you imagine? When I was at Apple, I mean, obviously it was a different time when Steve was alive. I can only tell you that it was a vibrant place to work. It was tough. It was an incredibly tough work environment. But I can also tell you that what we went through then completely changed later on after the site was built, and certainly with COVID right now. People don't want to come back into work in those large places. And we'll talk about those numbers here in just a second. What I also say is what happened back in 2019 is likely going to happen again. Okay. If history shows us anything, if you look at the vertical line that we say, and some of this will be available to you later, you've seen over the history since 1960 the various diseases that have impacted how we live, how we work, how we play. Bird flu, COVID, SARS, you name them, they've all been there over the last 50, 60 years. You guys know them better than I. But what I do know is that our environments are starting to plan for these sort of issues to happen again in the future. It's not uncommon for people at a commercial workspace that has nothing to do nor no education in your particular field to say, how do we find out how we make our employees safer? Wave detection, restroom sensors, elevator entrance, etc. Maybe a hand imprint. Is it something you do with your phone? Our customers are engaging with us differently than they did before, not just from tech that we have, but certainly because they're trying to find a way to make their employees safer to where they can come back to work again fully. But the number that sticks out to me is the age group of 18 to 40 that says that roughly 44%, they're not really fully willing to get back out into a store once they reopen. It just floored me. It was like the beginning of the end of the retail industry as we knew it. When a key demographic, 18 to 40-year-olds, were saying, I'm not sure if we want to go engage in stores again. So then you started hearing, transitioning here, telling you a little bit of the background of how it got to where it is today. Then it started transitioning into micro fulfillment strategies, distribution, making environments more centric to local environments rather than telling a customer to drive 20 or 30 minutes to a shopping mall where everything is. Commercial and retail development started getting closer to their customers. And we saw that in some of the zones that popped up as well. You saw various answers across the board, some that I was involved with in Europe, modular testing stations. How do I take an 8x10 room, put it on a truck, put 10 of them together and make them into an area where people can test and be safe immediately? And oh, by the way, Michael, you've got less than 3 weeks to figure this out. Our industry was put to the test like never before. How do we make these environments and set them aside for what could happen next down the road? Flexibility was a key piece for us, making them mobile, but more importantly, making them scalable and reusable in other industries as well, such as portable retail. But the fact remains, the one thing that I continue to tell people in every session, human capital will continue to be the most valued and expensive commodity that we all have. We can talk about tech, we could talk about AI, you can talk about 5G and robotics. We're certainly going to talk about robots here in a few minutes, but I can tell you nothing is more important to any CEO, any visionary than human capital. All of them, they say the same exact things. How do I keep them? How do I keep them happier? How do I make them safe? Every one of the people I engage with today, all the way up to our efforts with Citadel Securities in New York City, I can tell you first and foremost, verbatim, that conversation comes into play every single day. The other number that sticks out to me when we talk about the hybrid model, when you talk 9,000 people were surveyed, 83% say they wanted some sort of hybrid work environment where they can work from home and then go to work. I actually think it's, personal opinion, I think it's more productive for a lot of people. But the thing that sticks out was that 29% of that 83 actually reported success. And those were the people ages between 30 and 49. So a lot of people talked about a hybrid environment, but they didn't really want to talk about whether or not it was successful or not. So it left a key demographic to us exposed to figure out what the next step was in work-life play. Everybody's aware of what's going on in the industry right now. The next thing that's going against us, outside of the fact that people are having to work longer, the retirement age is increasing. For the first time in our history, the older generation will outnumber the younger by the year 2030. If you guys didn't catch my session earlier, the older generation will outnumber the younger generation by the year 2030. I'll let that set in for a second. We're talking about tech and advancements. Now you have an older workforce. Not that that's good or bad. It's just different. You have fewer younger workers getting into the workforce. And you're seeing the breaking news across the board. Labor is deteriorating at a rapid rate. They're no longer working in environments like yours or mine anymore. They're not working in the mills. They're not working in steel factories. Okay? They're becoming what I like to call this guy, the Instagram influencer. Okay? I say that only because my two boys talk about it all the time. They're like, oh, you know him? No, I don't know him. I use him as an example. People want to become Instagram influencers rather than some of the traditional work environments that we have today. Not that that's a bad thing, but it is impacting how we work, how we live, and how we play, and how we create different work environments across the board. More importantly, how we engage with our customers. The physical environments remain mostly unchanged. We still have stores, right? We still have hotels, we have hospitals, we have gas stations, but the ecosystem of how these environments work together has changed significantly. The live, work, and play experiences will continue to change at an alarming pace. much as the case with this particular conference that we have here today: marketing, internet, CXO, health, education. We're starting to see all of these a-traditional pillared industries collide, and they're all asking the same questions. How do we solve something before it ever happens? And we're all asking the same questions. The same methodology is happening in every single conference room. Every moment of ideation that we sit down and talk with our customers, they're the same questions regardless of industry. How do I connect to my customer better? How do I keep them longer? How do I make sure that they're taken care of? The environments that we put together, in particular at Samsung 837 almost 10 years ago, Angela Moody and I were talking about this earlier. I can't believe it's been 10 years. But the customer experience, not only in retail, but in your industry as well, has changed significantly. It's no longer defined by a single moment or purchase. It's a journey using a collective series of digital ecosystems within the actual ecosystem itself. And that particular ecosystem is changing. Think about it. You have people talking to each other, then you have technology devices, and all of a sudden you have smart home, and all those devices are working together. But I want you to expand outside of that. Much like we talked about in our session earlier today, these particular environments are changing on a city landscape area, in an urban zoning area. You're no longer going to see areas that are zoned for certain things only. I always say, building everywhere throughout the world, the United States makes the best use of zoning. We have gas stations that are always by gas stations. Go by Burger King, they're next to McDonald's, right? They're always next to each other. Well, that landscape of how these particular buildings are zoned is going to change significantly in the next 10 years, because the urban metroplex of how they're being designed is going to change. You're going to get closer to your customers, not farther away, and you're going to be able to get them their products faster than ever before. Our day-to-day ecosystem is constantly changing. It is. I sit in design charrettes with board members, with venture capitalists, with CEOs, CXOs, CTOs, every C-suite person you could possibly imagine. We sit down and have charrettes just like these two. And we talk about what's that engagement model look like, planning for the future, making the experience sticky, thinking about the environment, thinking about how to make sure that the attraction is there for people to love what we're producing and yet consistently want to come back. That type of charrette system is in play with one of the clients that I have that's in your industry today. And we'll show you a video about them here in just a few minutes. I'm extremely proud of how people are adapting the a-traditional environments into what's going to happen in the future. Medical systems, dental, you guys know the experience. You've seen it on your phones. How do you arrange for your appointments? All brought to you by 5G, 10G, etc. Remember the advent of 5G when it came out, it kind of failed initially and then got really strong. Well, One Medical and our particular team is engaged to kind of figure out, how do we make these environments more comfortable than before? Not just using design Pantones and creative people from a retail background or from a commercial background, but how do we get to environments where these people are closer to their customers than they've ever seen before? One Medical does it not just from a standpoint of office spaces and suites that look amazing, but certainly the integration of technology as well. Another company we're working with, keep my fingers crossed, everybody in the future, is they're pioneering how they're setting up and working specifically with individuals in a local community market. So as before, you would have to go into an area and you drive 20 or 5 miles, 30 miles, etc., to find a place that would meet the suite of particular efforts that you needed. Instead, they're coming closer to you, and they're coming closer to you more often. You're going to see that shift in real estate, in the health, education, and technology sectors faster than you saw in the last 15 years. You're going to see it change significantly over the next 5. But I would say that the idea behind them, they're all local, they're all welcoming, and they're flexible. Their flexible environments empower them to change and be adaptable to their customers over time. Obviously, you guys know about tech and tablets and things like that. I don't have to tell you how that goes. That's evolving as well. But how about how products are distributed, not just from a local pharmacy? I go to a doctor, I'm not feeling well, I get my prescription, I go to the pharmacy, the CVS, I sit there and wait for an hour, and I turn around and come back and I have my medicine, I'm good to go. the a-traditional method of engagement and the closure of that appointment, in my opinion, is going to change significantly in the next 5 to 10 years. How? Through micro fulfillment. When you look at various things with a tech perspective, we know that some people are talking about putting chipsets in their employees for medical alerts and athletic training to monitor heart rates, etc. And a great panel here earlier. I picked up on a series of notes. I'm sorry for those that were involved. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to write down some of your notes because it was brilliant. In addition to that, hand scanners for security, auto pay, airport screening. You guys seen it in some of the airports? You don't need a pass anymore. You just walk up and they scan you. You don't even do a boarding pass anymore. It was like that just happened just that quick. So the evolutionary change in tech is happening faster than people realize as well. What we did at Samsung simply, when we looked at what a person's activity was, we wanted to attach the activity to the product. Where some consumers, I should say some customers, failed in the past. My apologies, I'll go backwards one screen if I could. There we go. Right here, let's see. We saw that they were attracting their product first and then tried to associate that product to an activity. Well, at Samsung, the methodology was completely different. We wanted to take the activity and associate it to the product, which meant conversion. You're going to see that type of methodology in your industry as well. Your product is strong, but how do we associate it to a person's activity that they can relate to in a different way? Micro fulfillment in the age of direct to consumer is happening at an alarming rate. Built for these locations. I've never seen anything like it. Everything on the left is from a company called Adabotics, a pioneering robotics company. The one on the right is Fabric, where you have asset management is taking care of shrink, speed to market, limited labor, 24/7 operations. Why? Because centers like this can put out 120,000 products per day using 4 people. Yeah, the age of the robots is here. I can tell you physically, I physically watched something that looked like a Terminator movie walking across a warehouse. It was one of the strangest things I've ever seen. But these particular products and robot devices can scan your product, put it into a bin, take it out of the bin, displace it, and out to your door as quickly as possible in a secure environment. It's also happening in grocery as well. So what we're seeing, real estate is shrinking from an automated warehouse standpoint. I use the example of Amazon. Has anybody been to an Amazon warehouse before or seen one? Great. You know how big, long they are, and all the product is relatively flat, shallow. Have all that dead space above 15 feet that goes all the way to the deck. Well, in a room like this, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. Change is not going to be easy. Knock on wood. Some days you're going to feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill, like you're the only one with a great idea. You're going to think that nobody else is listening to me. I'm the only one out there. Nobody understands me. But I'm going to tell you the key piece for you is to know your why. Why are you doing it? Know your customer. Stick to your guns. Change is needed. Change is coming. Sometimes I had one of my customers say, adaptive change is happening so fast, you either change or get run over. What's that phrase they used to say? You're part of the steamroller or part of the pavement. You got to find a way to move with the change. But just know you've got to focus on the one reason that it will work rather than focusing on all the reasons that something can't. Because change will need to happen every single day. Earlier, we talked about doing one thing today, changing your mind. You're going to have to change your mind about how your ways of working are working today because they will be significantly different in the next 5 to 10 years. Anybody recognize this? For the people that saw my session earlier, you might recognize it. Anybody ever drove a car in Europe on the wrong side of the road? Right? I never hit anybody when I lived in London. I'm grateful that I never caused an accident. But you ever wondered when somebody said, I'm going to change from one side of the road and we're going to make our population drive on the other side of the road, just like everybody else does? You ever wondered how that happened? Or what would happen if it actually did? Stockholm, 1960. They said, well, we're going to move from the right side of the road to the left side of the road like everybody else. And it didn't happen very easily, as you could see. Change is not going to be easy. Change is hard. Incremental change is hard. Needs to be methodical, but it will be exponentially harder if you don't start now. It's true, our relationships and our experiences and our words define us. They do. Every single day. You're going to come up with an idea with somebody you talk to and you're going to scratch it and scratch your head. Man, we need to do this. Move forward. Go do it. Don't sit and wait thinking that it's not going to work. Put it into play. The environments are changing every day. If you don't change now, you can bet that your other competitors are, because I see it every single day. In closing, obviously, I'm available for questions later. I'd ask only simply, how will your experiences define you? Every day, ordinary people everywhere do extraordinary things. They do. They walk people across the street, people going to school every day, taking care of their children, single mom, single dad, taking care of their kids, working 50, 60, 80 hours a week. Every day, ordinary people do extraordinary things. They do. I'm going to ask you to do one thing. Outside of changing your mind and doing something different for your industry, I'm going to ask you every single day in everything you do to be extraordinary every single day in engaging with your customers, in engaging with your family, your coworkers. Be extraordinary every single day. It's been a privilege to talk to you guys today. Again, I'm overwhelmed at the amount of talent that's in this room in this conference, and I appreciate you guys taking time for me. Thank you very much.